She only brought her sick baby to work because she had no other choice. But in one moment, her whole life and her job were ripped away. Just when she thought she'd lost everything, a stranger stepped in with a secret of his own. What happened next will leave you questioning everything you believe about second chances. Hello, family. Welcome to Tales Haven. I hope you find my story videos interesting and engaging. Kindly subscribe to my channel for more stories. Thank you as you do so. Sit back, relax as we dive into the story. The old alarm clock buzzed on the nightstand at 5:30 a.m., its shrill beep cutting through the quiet. Callie Brooks rolled over, her eyes heavy with exhaustion. She hadn't slept more than 3 hours. Every time Nolan coughed in the crib, her heart clenched with worry. Her small apartment smelled faintly of baby powder and instant coffee. The kitchen was really just a corner with a stove and a tiny sink. A stack of bills sat by the toaster. She tried not to look at them. Callie rubbed her eyes and stood up. She moved slowly, her back aching from rocking Nolan half the night. She picked up her little boy, pressing her lips to his warm forehead. "Morning, sweet pea," she whispered. Nolan sniffled and blinked up at her with round, watery eyes. His cheeks were flushed pink from his cold. "Don't worry," she murmured as she rocked him gently. "Mama's going to figure this out." She placed him in the high chair and strapped him in. He whimpered, reaching for her. "I know," she sighed. "I know, baby." She warmed a bottle of milk on the stove and checked the time again. 6 a.m. If she didn't get out the door soon, she'd miss the 7 o'clock bus that took her across town to Westland Tech Solutions. As she measured the formula, her phone buzzed on the counter. She picked it up and read the text. "Little Stars Daycare. We're sorry, Ms. Brooks. Due to Nolan's fever and cough, we can't accept him today." Her stomach dropped. No, she whispered. She called her neighbor, Mrs. Dale, who sometimes babysat in emergencies. No answer. She tried again. Still nothing. Callie leaned her forehead against the cabinet door. Tears burned her eyes. She had no parents to call. No siblings. Nolan's father had left before he was born. For a moment, she thought about calling in sick herself. But she couldn't afford it. She was already behind on rent. She'd barely paid the gas bill last week. "I'm so sorry, baby," she said again. "You'll have to come with Mama today. Just for a little while." She hurried to get ready, pulling on her one good pair of black slacks and a simple blue blouse. She combed her brown hair back into a neat bun and dabbed a little concealer under her tired eyes. Nolan started to fuss again, coughing in little bursts. "Shoo," she soothed. She picked him up and held him against her chest. She found his warmest blanket, soft blue with little yellow stars, and wrapped him carefully. She tucked his favorite stuffed elephant beside him in the carrier. Then she took a deep breath and looked around the apartment, hoping she hadn't forgotten anything. Her bus pass, her work badge, a spare diaper and wipes, the baby's bottle. Callie took one last look at the clock, 6:45 a.m. She was running out of time. With Nolan secured against her, she stepped outside into the cold morning air. She walked quickly down the cracked sidewalk to the bus stop. The city was still waking up, headlights glowed in the fog, and a few early joggers passed by, giving her sympathetic glances when they saw the baby. At the corner, the bus rumbled up. She climbed the steps and dropped her last $2 into the fare box. The driver, a kind older man named Gus, gave her a worried look. "He's got a cold?" Gus asked softly. Callie nodded, ashamed. "I hope he feels better," Gus said kindly. "Thank you," she whispered. She took a seat near the back. Nolan rested his head against her collarbone, breathing in soft, tired sighs. She stroked his hair, trying to fight the panic in her chest. By the time the bus pulled up in front of the tall glass building, Callie's hands were shaking. She kissed Nolan's forehead one more time. "Be brave with me, okay?" she whispered. She stepped off the bus and walked up the wide steps. As she pushed open the heavy door to the lobby, she felt her heart thumping like a drum. She had never brought Nolan to work before. She knew it was against the rules. She knew her supervisor, Mr. Kessler, wouldn't understand. But she was out of options. Callie kept her head down and tried to move fast. She passed the front desk, where Diane, the receptionist, sat scrolling through her phone. Callie gave her a small wave. "Morning," Diane called. Then she looked up and noticed the baby carrier. Her eyes widened, but before she could say anything, Callie kept walking, her cheeks burning. She reached her cubicle, her heart pounding in her throat. She gently lowered Nolan's carrier onto the floor by her desk and prayed he would stay asleep. For a moment, she thought she'd made it safely. Maybe she could get through the morning unnoticed. But then, from under the desk, Nolan let out the tiniest sneeze. Achoo! The sound was so small, so innocent, but it rang out like a bell. And Callie knew, in that instant, that nothing would ever be the same again. A moment later, she heard footsteps approaching, hard, quick steps that made her stomach clench. "Miss Brooks," a cold voice barked from behind her. She closed her eyes. For 1 second, she wished she could disappear. Then she turned slowly in her chair. Mr. Kessler stood there in his gray suit, his square jaw clenched so tight the vein in his neck stood out. He was a tall man with slicked-back hair and sharp eyes that seemed to find every mistake. He looked down at the baby carrier by her feet. "What is this?" he demanded, pointing a stiff finger at Nolan. Callie's voice trembled. I can explain, sir." Nolan stared up at Mr. Kessler with wide, curious eyes. He made a small hiccup sound and clutched his stuffed elephant. "I'm waiting," Mr. Kessler said, his voice like ice. Callie swallowed hard. His daycare wouldn't take him this morning. "He has a cold, but I didn't have any other options. I knew it was against the rules, but you thought the rules didn't apply to you?" he snapped. "No, sir," she said quickly, her cheeks flaming. "I tried to keep him quiet. He's been very good. I just needed a few hours." "This is not a nursery, Miss Brooks," Mr. Kessler said sharply. "This is a professional workplace." "I know," she whispered, feeling tears press against her eyes. "I'm so sorry. I promise it won't happen again." "Damn right it won't," he said coldly. "Because you won't be coming back." Her breath caught in her throat. What do you mean?" "You're fired," Mr. Kessler said simply. It felt like the ground dropped out from under her. "Please," she gasped, her voice cracking. "Please, sir, I need this job. I'm doing my best. I don't have anyone else to help me. I'm not interested in your excuses," Mr. Kessler interrupted. He turned and waved over the security guard. "Derek," he said, his tone bored, "escort Ms. Brooks out of the building." The guard, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, looked uncomfortable. "Mr. Kessler, she has a baby." "Then she should have thought about that before bringing her child here," Kessler snapped. "Now." Callie's legs felt weak as she slowly stood up. Her hand shook so badly she could barely reach for her box of things, a framed photo of Nolan, a little mug that said "World's Best Mom," and her notebooks. "Ma'am," Derek said softly, "I'm sorry about this." She nodded, unable to speak. With one hand, she lifted the box. With the other, she picked up Nolan's carrier. The baby blinked up at her, as if he knew something bad had happened. The walk to the elevator felt 100 miles long. Every step was heavy. Every eye in the office seemed to follow her, some full of pity, some of curiosity. A woman from accounting, Janine, tried to say something, but Callie kept her head down. She didn't want anyone to see the tears rolling down her cheeks. When the elevator doors finally closed, she let out a shaky breath. Nolan reached for her face, his small hand brushing her chin. She forced herself to smile at him, though her vision blurred. "It's okay, baby," she whispered, her voice raw. "Mama's okay." But she wasn't okay. She had no idea how she was going to pay rent now. No idea how she would buy groceries or formula. The elevator reached the ground floor, and she stepped out into the bright lobby. Sunlight streamed through the tall glass windows, but it felt too harsh. She walked to a bench near the front entrance and slowly sat down. The box of her belongings slid onto her lap. For a moment, she just stared at her reflection in the polished floor tiles, her tired face, her red-rimmed eyes, the baby bundled close to her heart. Everything she had fought so hard to keep, her job, her little bit of stability, was gone in a single moment. Callie felt the tears come faster. She leaned forward, resting her forehead against Nolan's carrier. "I'm so sorry," she whispered again. "I tried so hard." Nolan let out a tiny whimper and kicked his feet against the blanket. Callie wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. She knew she couldn't sit there forever. But for that moment, she let herself grieve the life she had just lost. She didn't hear the tall man in the dark suit step out of the private elevator at the other end of the lobby. She didn't see him pause when he noticed her sitting there crying. But in that quiet moment, everything was already starting to change. Callie sat on the cold bench, her shoulders slumped. She tried to gather the strength to stand, but her legs felt like they were made of stone. People passed by, some pretending not to look, some sneaking quick glances filled with pity. She took a shaky breath and wiped her eyes again. She could feel Nolan watching her with his wide, innocent gaze. "I'm okay," she whispered to him, though she didn't believe it. "I'll figure this out. I promise." As she reached for a tissue in her purse, she heard the soft sound of polished shoes approaching. She didn't look up at first. She thought it was the security guard coming to tell her she had to leave the building. But then a warm, steady voice spoke above her. "Ma'am, are you all right?" She froze, her hand still inside her purse. Callie slowly lifted her head. Standing in front of her was a tall man she'd never seen before. He wore a dark blue suit with a crisp white shirt. His hair was neat, and he had a strong jaw and kind gray eyes. He looked nothing like the usual managers who walked around with clipboards and sour faces. "I'm sorry," she said quickly, her voice breaking. I'll leave. I just needed a minute to think." He raised a hand gently. "No, please don't rush away on my account." His eyes dropped to the carrier where Nolan was peeking out, his little nose pink from his cold. "That's your son?" he asked softly. Callie nodded. She felt embarrassed all over again. "Yes. His name is Nolan." The man crouched a little, so he was closer to Nolan's eye level. "Hi, Nolan," he said with a soft smile. "Rough morning, huh?" Nolan blinked at him and let out a small sigh, as if to agree. The man straightened again and looked back at Callie. His expression was warm, but serious. "I hope you don't mind me asking," he said, "but why are you sitting here crying with a box of your things?" Callie swallowed hard. She didn't want to start crying again. But there was something calm and genuine about this stranger. "I was fired," she whispered. His brows drew together. "Fired? For what reason?" Callie's voice came out small. "For bringing my son to work. His daycare refused him this morning because he has a fever. I couldn't find anyone to help. I knew it was against policy, but I didn't know what else to do." The man was silent for a moment. He looked down at the floor, then back at her. "I see," he said quietly. "And who is your supervisor?" "Mr. Kessler," she replied, almost choking on the name. He nodded slowly, as if he was making a note in his mind. "I'm sorry," Callie rushed to add. "You probably don't want to hear all this. I'm just so tired." His expression softened even more. "No need to apologize. You've been through a lot today." She tried to collect herself. She dabbed her eyes again and tried to straighten up a little, but her blouse was wrinkled, and she knew she looked like a mess. "Would you like a glass of water?" he asked. "Or somewhere more private to sit?" "No, thank you," she said quietly. I'll be okay." For a moment, they were both silent. People continued to come and go through the lobby, but it felt like the world had gotten quieter around them. Finally, the man took a slow breath. "I should probably introduce myself," he said. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a slim leather wallet. He flipped it open, revealing a shiny badge and an ID card. "My name is Brennan Cole," he said calmly. "I'm the new CEO of Westland Tech Solutions." Callie felt her heart jump into her throat. "The CEO?" she repeated in a whisper. "Yes," Brennan said with a faint, understanding smile. "I arrived this morning. I was coming to meet Mr. Kessler when I saw you sitting here." Callie's mouth went dry. She had never spoken to anyone so high up in the company. She hadn't even known he was in the building yet. I'm so sorry, she stammered, trying to stand. I didn't mean to make a scene. He raised a hand gently to stop her. No need to stand. Please sit. You've had enough trouble today. Her knees felt weak, so she obeyed. She sat back down slowly, clutching the carrier handle as if it was the only thing keeping her steady. Brennan took a seat beside her on the bench, leaving a respectful space between them. Would you mind telling me more about what happened? He asked kindly. I'd like to hear your side. Callie looked down at her lap. For a moment, she didn't know if she should speak. She was afraid that if she said the wrong thing, she'd get in more trouble. But when she looked up into Brennan Cole's calm gray eyes, something told her she could be honest. So she took a slow breath, her voice unsteady but brave. And she began to tell him everything. Callie held Nolan's carrier tighter as she tried to find the right words. I came in early, she began, her voice low. I thought if I could keep Nolan quiet, maybe no one would notice. I planned to call around and see if someone could watch him just for the afternoon. But before I could figure anything out, Mr. Kessler heard him sneeze. Brennan listened closely, never interrupting. He came over so angry, Callie went on, her eyes burning again. He told me I was unprofessional, that I was disrupting everyone. I begged him to let me stay just a few hours, but she swallowed hard. He fired me in front of everyone. She brushed a tear from her cheek. I know I shouldn't have brought Nolan, she whispered, but I didn't have a choice. I'm a single mom. His father, he's not around. I'm all he has. Brennan was quiet for a long moment. He looked down at Nolan, who had finally drifted into a light sleep. His small mouth was open just a little, his tiny breaths warming the blanket. Then Brennan looked back up at Callie. You remind me of someone, he said gently. Who? She asked, surprised. My mother, Brennan replied, his eyes thoughtful. When I was small, she worked at a supermarket. Some days she couldn't afford a babysitter. She'd put me in a little playpen behind the counter and hope her boss didn't come in. Callie blinked, too stunned to reply. I still remember her face when she got caught, Brennan said. How scared she looked. How ashamed. He shook his head slowly. She was the hardest working person I've ever known, he continued. She just needed someone to understand, to give her a chance. Callie's heart squeezed, so tight, she thought it might burst. No parent should have to choose between feeding their child and following a rule, Brennan said quietly. Callie swallowed, her throat thick with emotion. Thank you. Just thank you for listening. Before Brennan could reply, the elevator behind them chimed open. Footsteps hurried across the lobby. Mr. Kessler appeared, moving fast, looking slightly out of breath. His eyes darted between Brennan and Callie, confusion clouding his face. Mr. Cole, Kessler said quickly, smoothing his hair. I was just coming to meet you upstairs. I didn't realize you'd arrived. Brennan stood slowly. His calm expression never wavered. I've been here for a few minutes, Brennan replied. Kessler's gaze flicked to Callie and the baby carrier. A flash of irritation crossed his face. You've met Ms. Brooks, he said stiffly. I see she's still here. Yes, Brennan said. She's just explained her situation. Kessler cleared his throat. Well, sir, as you can see, she was in clear violation of company policy. I had no choice but to let her go. I'm sure you understand the need to maintain standards. Callie felt herself shrinking again, but she forced her chin up. Brennan's expression stayed calm, but there was something steely in his eyes. I understand the importance of standards, he said. But I also understand the importance of compassion. Kessler shifted uncomfortably. Sir, with respect, if you allow this kind of behavior... Brennan lifted one hand. Enough. The lobby fell so silent that Callie could hear the tick of the wall clock. Mr. Kessler, Brennan said slowly, do you know why I took this job? Kessler looked startled. Because Westland Tech has strong potential? That's part of it, Brennan replied. But also because I wanted to build a company that stands for more than numbers. A company that values its people. He turned to Callie. Ms. Brooks, you are not fired, he said clearly. Her mouth fell open. I'm not. You will return to your position effective immediately, Brennan continued. And you will not be penalized for doing what any loving parent would have done. Kessler's face turned bright red. Sir, this sets a terrible precedent. The only precedent it sets, Brennan interrupted calmly, is that we are a company with a heart. Callie pressed a hand over her mouth, tears spilling again. But this time, they weren't tears of shame. Thank you, she whispered, her voice breaking. I don't even have words. You don't need any words, Brennan said gently. You've been through enough today. He looked back at Kessler. From now on, we will create a family emergency policy. If an employee has no safe place for their child, they can bring them here. We'll designate a room for parents who need it. Kessler looked like he might argue, but Brennan's cool gaze stopped him. Is that understood? Brennan asked. Kessler swallowed. Yes, sir. Brennan turned back to Callie, his expression softening again. And Ms. Brooks, he added, when you have time, I'd appreciate your help developing this policy. You clearly understand the challenges better than anyone. She nodded slowly, hardly able to believe what she was hearing. I'd be honored, she whispered. For the first time all day, she felt like she could breathe again. Callie stood very still as Mr. Kessler turned away, his jaw clenched tight. She watched him disappear into the elevator without another word. For the first time since dawn, she didn't feel like a failure. Brennan glanced at her gently. You don't have to rush back upstairs, he said. Take a few minutes. I'm sure today has felt like 100 days packed into one. She nodded, wiping her cheeks again. Thank you. I can't believe this. He looked down at Nolan, who had finally stopped sniffling and was now chewing thoughtfully on the ear of his stuffed elephant. Your little guy seems like a fighter, Brennan said softly. Callie let out a shaky laugh. He is. He gets that from my mom, I think. She raised me on her own, too. For a moment, they simply stood together in the bright lobby, two people who understood that life didn't always fit into neat, tidy boxes. I meant what I said, Brennan continued. I'd really value your input on making this company more supportive of parents. Callie swallowed. I'd love to help. It feels good to think maybe this awful day could make things better for someone else. A hint of a smile curved Brennan's mouth. That's the spirit we need around here. At last, she felt steady enough to pick up her box. She shifted Nolan's carrier onto her other arm and started to turn toward the elevator. But Brennan stopped her with a gentle hand on her shoulder. One more thing, he said. If it's okay, I'd like to call a short staff meeting this afternoon. I think it's time everyone heard what this company stands for, loud and clear. Her heart squeezed with both nerves and gratitude. Of course, she said softly. As she rode the elevator back up to her floor, her mind swirled with everything that had just happened. Just an hour ago, she believed her life had fallen apart for good. Now, somehow, she was returning with her job and maybe something even more important, a voice that mattered. When she stepped out onto her floor, a hush fell across the room. Everyone turned to look at her. Some people still looked confused, unsure if she was in trouble or safe. But Janine from accounting stepped forward first, her eyes bright. Callie, she whispered, are you okay? Callie nodded, feeling her throat tighten again. I'm okay. Janine threw her arms around her and hugged her carefully, so she wouldn't jostle Nolan. Soon others gathered close, offering soft words and gentle touches on her shoulder. I'm so glad you're back, someone murmured. You didn't deserve what happened, said another. Callie's cheeks were hot, but this time she didn't feel embarrassed. She felt seen. An hour later, Brennan sent out a company-wide email. Subject: New Family Emergency Policy. Body: effective immediately. Any employee who faces an unexpected childcare emergency is permitted to bring their child to work. A private room will be prepared to provide comfort and safety for parents and children. We will also begin developing additional resources and supports for working families. No one should have to choose between their job and caring for their child. Thank you for your understanding and cooperation. Brennan Cole. As soon as the message went out, Callie's inbox filled with replies. Thank you for being brave enough to stand up. You helped all of us. If you ever need anything, just ask. She pressed a hand over her heart, overwhelmed. When the workday finally ended, she stayed behind to speak with Brennan in the small conference room. Nolan lay asleep in the carrier beside her chair, wrapped snug in his star blanket. "You did something remarkable today," Brennan told her. Callie shook her head. "I didn't do anything special. I didn't have anywhere else to go." "That's exactly why it was special," he said softly. "Because you showed us all what real strength looks like." She looked down at her sleeping son and brushed a finger across his cheek. "I hope when he grows up he knows I tried," she whispered. Brennan's voice was warm. "He will." They spent an hour brainstorming ideas: on-site daycare, emergency vouchers, flexible hours. Every idea felt like a small brick in a wall she was helping to build, something strong that would protect other parents. When they finally stood to leave, Brennan offered his hand. She shook it, feeling steadier than she had in months. Outside, the sky was soft and pink with the evening sunset. The city looked different, as if it were shining just for them. Callie took one last look at the tall glass building that had nearly broken her spirit. Now it felt like a place she belonged. As she kissed Nolan's forehead and whispered, "We're going to be okay," she realized she truly meant it. For the first time in a long time, she walked away not just as an employee, but as someone whose story had the power to change everything. That brings us to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you do, kindly subscribe to my channel. Like and share this video to your friends and loved. You can also comment what you feel about the story. Your support and engagement encourage me to post more videos. Thanks for watching.